Hello, my name is Antoni Zakrzewski. I'm a PhD student at the Department of History at the University of Warsaw, and I also work in the academic department at the European Network Remembrance and Solidarity. Today, I would like to present you the topic of the Stalin Monument in Warsaw. My main goal is to discuss the timeline of commemoration project and to show the evolution from the solemn promise to unveil the monument to the quiet withdrawal. The paper describes the history of memory and the transition from the need to commemorate to the complete oblivion induced by the political situation. The article became a chapter in the book presented here, and it is based on the archival sources, newspapers, photographs, and the chronicles, but I also took into the careful consideration hearsays and legends. I would like to start with a brief description and comparison between Warsaw and the other capitals in the region. I selected 4 of them, and I would like to underline that I'm only focusing on the monuments, official monuments. The monument in Prague was built in 1949, but it was unveiled in 1955. It quickly became a very big problem for the Czech Communist Party, and it was demolished in 1962. The monument in Budapest, and Stalin on the monument, was watching the manifestation parades for 5 years before the revolution only left shoes on the plinth. The Stalin in East Berlin was built in 1951, and it was located on the Stalin Allee. Today it's Karl Marx Allee. In 1961, it was dismounted overnight and melted and casted into sculptures at the Berlin Zoo. The Stalin in Bucharest was unveiled in 1951 also, and it stood in the Stalin Park. Today it's King Michael I Park. It survived 11 years, so 1 year longer than the Berlin one. Before I start, I would like to present you the 2 gentlemen who played a major role in the story of post-war rebuilding of Warsaw, which was destroyed in the Second World War in 90%. They also play a key role in the story of Stalin Monument. On the left, you can see Bolesław Bierut, and on the right, you can see Józef Sigalin. The personal cult of Stalin was very strong in December 1949 during the Stalin's 70th birthday, or allegedly 70th, because some historians claim that he was actually 71. The whole Eastern Bloc commemorated it, and for example, they renamed one of the streets to Stalin Allee. In Poland, they gathered the whole train of gifts and sent it to Moscow. The 2 plates that you can see here are still on the display in the Stalin's Museum in Gory, Georgia. Apart from the gifts, here in the Saski Garden, they also unveil the monument. The text of the monument you can see on the screen, but they also mentioned here the 70th birthday of Joseph Stalin on this 1 meter cube. It was the latter information that most probably caused that some people wrongly write about this monument as a monument to Stalin to this day. The next episode, which have to be mentioned while discussing the history of the monument to Stalin, happened during the construction of MDM, here on the map. The MDM, which is Marszałkowska Dzielnica Mieszkaniowa or Marszałkowska Housing District, is a rough translation to English. It was an urban planning scheme, very similar to Stalin Allee, which I mentioned earlier, or Gorky Street in Moscow. And as you remember, the year 1951 was the year when most of the mentioned capital cities unveiled the monuments. In the few places, I have encountered the information that building a monument to Stalin was taken into account here, but I treat this information very carefully. The layout of the central square, which you can see here, was not conducive to one central monument. Polish communists announced in April 1951 the competition for 3 sculptures. They were thinking about topics: Silesia, Pomerania, capital, or peasant worker soldier, or Marx, Engels, and Lenin. But then, what about Stalin? The competition didn't bring satisfactory result, so instead Bolesław Bierut suggested building a temporary solution, candelabrum. And as you can see here, they are still standing there. Were Polish communism led by Bierut seriously considering building a monument to Stalin on MDM? I think it might be possible, but there were many obstacles to this location. One of them was Church of Saint Saviour, which is very high and it will dominate the monument. So now we are going to change the location to here. And as you can see in the article from Tribuna Ludu in 1952, Warsaw received a gift from the Soviet Union. On the basis of the agreement, the cost of the building itself were borne by the Soviet side, but, which is discussed less willingly, the financing of its surrounding was the responsibility of the Polish side. And before the Stalin's death, were they planning to erect the monument on the square and nearby the Palace of Culture and Science? I have encountered this. This is from the May parade in 1952. And as you can see here, there is no dominant monument here. There are some smaller on the both sides of the Palace of the Culture and Science. But I think that they weren't planning to build the main monument of Stalin there. But everything changed after Stalin's death in March 1953. After receiving the news of Stalin's death by Hohn, Bierut called the meeting of the Politburo, and the minutes of this meeting, which you can see here, are the earliest document that I have found about which mention the idea of building the monument. The results of this discussion was the resolution that was published the next day in the Tribuna Ludu, and as you can see here, on the square in front of the Joseph Stalin Palace of Culture and Science, erect a monument to Joseph Stalin. After Stalin's death, they decided to change also the name of the square around the Palace of the Culture and Science. The Stalin Square was supposed to be a place for official parades, so Polish communists considered the possibility to connect the monument with the Tribune. And they flew to Moscow in the Polish delegation with Józef Sigarin, and Soviet architects advised them not to connect the Tribune with the monument like in Budapest. They also advised about the height of the monument. After returning to the country, the Polish delegation presented guidelines from Moscow, and the Secretariat of the Central Committee decided that the monument would be placed on the axis of the main entrance to the palace, from the side of Marszałkowska Street, and wouldn't be connected with the government stand, the Tribune. According to the advice of Soviet architects, its height was set initially for the 15 meters. And as you can see here, this is the quote from Sigarin, who is also talking about the deadline that they are going to open the Palace of the Culture and Science on the 22nd of July, 1955. In August 1953, the Polish communists discussed with Soviet delegation residing in Warsaw, who is going to make a statue of Stalin. The outcome was that the artists from Poland would create Stalins, and one of the arguments was that the Stalin in Budapest was created by Hungarian sculptors and in Bucharest by Romanian. They also debated which national heroes and in what form should be presented apart from Stalin. After long debates, they decided that they are going to present writer Adam Mickiewicz and Polish scientist Mikołaj Kopernik. They were chosen representatives of the field of the culture and science. They also agreed that to make a sculpture of Polish-Soviet friendship, but they set it inside the palace. It was agreed also that the sculpture should be in the sitting position behind Stalin, and they will not compete with the main monument. So Stalin was set to 8.3 meters, and the monument sitting behind him were set for the 4.1, as you can see on the slide on the picture from 1954. You can see Stalin and the sitting very small monument behind. With this in mind, the Polish communists invited 5 Polish sculptors for the competition for the Stalin monument. The most important and the most experienced was Ksawery Tunikowski. Tunikowski created already some sculptures, but initiated by the government. They were paid some remuneration, and they were asked to provide the designs of the standing monument to Stalin in the scale 1:10 and 1:100 by March 1954, so 1 year after Stalin's death. Information about the progress of the work on the monument was officially reported by the Sigarin in Tribuna Ludu also in January 1954. The most eminent Polish sculptors who are currently working on the sketchy designs for the monument to Stalin. And this is the photo which was also near this article. And he also described the square measuring 50 by 70 meters between the central stand and the main entrance to palace. A statue of Joseph Stalin will be erected here, about 15 meters high with a pedestal. The Central Committee analyzed the project in March and the first designs of a monument to Stalin, but none of the solutions were satisfactory. And here is the quote that the authors present Stalin too one-sidedly. In the pictures, you can see projects created by Ksawery Dunikowski, which were presented in Królikarnia in Warsaw during one of the exhibitions. In order to explain to sculptors how to present the multi-layered figure of Stalin, a meeting was called during which party members gave their comments about the sculptures. They also asked artists to create a monument on the scale 1 to 4, so they were about 2 meters high. They not only passed their guidelines, but they also visited them in their studios. The artists were ready in September 1954, and they met with the politicians in National Museum. From the documents, we can see that the communists were not happy with the presented project. They used phrases like not touching, inappropriate. They also criticized the hand gestures or the fact that some of the sculptures expressed the thinker rather than the leader. Especially, the project designed by Dunikowski do not suit the commission. And as you can see here on the slide, why? The interpretation of Stalin created by Dunikowski is not easy topic. Was it political provocation or just a form of expression and creation of monument in brutalist style? It was for sure unusual, and it is easy to understand why Polish communists decided not to create this monument in front of the Palace of Culture and Science. Years later, one of the sculptors recalled that he heard the stories from the janitors in the museum that the politicians were gathering there, once chose this, sometimes another. They finally decided that none of the presented work is suitable for implementation in the designed place. When they realized that they are not going to be ready for the opening of Palace, Bierut was supposed to say, "I don't think that we will build this monument." Ironically, when the choice of the design clearly slowed down, the construction work on the site of the monument gathered pace. The reinforced concrete foundation on which the monument was to stand were 5 meters deep, and the progress was reported by the newspaper in November 1954. Also, in the investment plan for 1955, provided a development of a square, and here is a quote, square by the monument to J. Stalin, lying a concrete base and a stone surface. Stalin's monument wasn't mentioned there. In May 1955, Trybuna Ludu wrote about free-shift works on the monument to Mickiewicz and Kopernik. A week before opening, the architects wrote about the square in front of Stalin monument, distinguished by its beauty. However, he remained silent about the fact that the monument is not there. Before the palace was handed over, it was necessary to somehow cover the poured foundation. A month earlier, before the opening, Municipal Works Company was given the task of making curbs of sandstone slabs for the flower bed in the square by the Stalin monument. The temporary solution worked perfectly, and the plants have been planted there to this date, as you can see here. Here is monument to Mickiewicz, monument to Kopernik, and here is the place for Stalin monument. Why the monument to Stalin wasn't created? First of all, the political situation and the politics of memory were very crucial in this case. The need for remembrance was imposed on the Polish society from foreign agency, in this case Polish and Russian communists. On the other hand, one should also remember about very strict deadlines. They announced the idea to build a monument to Stalin in March 1953, and it was supposed to be ready in July 1955. Nevertheless, despite the almost impossible deadlines, 3 out of 4 monuments were unveiled during the opening of the Palace of Culture. The project had also big political baggage, and they had trouble reaching the decision. Communist bureaucracy caused problems to the artists who were working on this project. While working on this topic, I have encountered numerous committees, secretariats, council, ministries, departments, and I have also read about 50 names of people involved in this project. The fact that monument wasn't unveiled might be an evidence of the reluctance of Polish communists towards Stalin, but this thesis is obviously not supported by the government sources. Based on the unofficial sources and hearsays, it is often quoted that Bierut said, "It is enough that we have Stalin's Avenue, Stalin's Palace of Culture, and the poems in honor of Stalin." Also, the atmosphere changed. In summer 1955, it is sometimes described as a period of waning cult of Stalin. The following months brought a thaw and a new political climate in which the Generalissimo monument was less and less desirable, sometimes even undesirable, especially after October 1956. In 1957, Stalin's name was erased from the book, as here on the right, and also from the facade. On the other hand, it wasn't the only project at that time that was announced officially and then silently closed. For example, it was Metro, Royal Castle, or the buildings surrounding the Palace of the Culture called Eastern Wall. They were also dissolved. It comes as no surprise that the memory of the monument or the memory of the idea to build the monument is not very common among Polish citizens. The Stalin monument is mentioned while discussing Dunikowski's projects or during historical walks around the palace. The palace itself is sometimes treated as a monument to Stalin. It gathers all the attention, especially during recurring debates concerning its demolition. Discussion about demolition usually takes place on the anniversary of the opening on the 22nd of July, for example, this year. Also, recurring topic is whether the Stalin is still the patron of the Palace of the Culture of Science. The forgotten concrete foundation in front of the palace nowadays still use a flower bed with bushes, as I mentioned, and the gypsum casting are silent testimonies of the unrealized project. And here I would like to present you my bibliography. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have any comments or questions, please do not hesitate to contact me via email, and I'm looking forward to the discussion during the conference. Goodbye.